The showroom was packed, every inch of space glowing under sterile white light. Sleek, stainless steel purifiers stood like soldiers in formation, cold, polished, unyielding. Customers drifted through the aisles in quiet indecision, their reflections dancing on chrome surfaces. The air buzzed faintly with the hum of electronics and carried a sharp metallic tang like clean water and cold steel. And there, in the center of it all, stood Jackson. No suit, no name tag, just a plain buttoned shirt and the kind of presence that went unnoticed, intentionally or not. 3 sales staff lingered nearby, their backs to him. Their laughter was private. One of them, Ethan, was streaming live to an audience that existed somewhere far more interesting than this store. The others swiped through commission charts, fingers twitching in rhythm with sales targets. Not a single one of them turned to greet him. Jackson stepped forward, slow, deliberate. When he spoke, his voice was calm, steady like a man used to being in control, yet rarely listened to these days. That model there, the RORO series. The sign says $12.99. Is that correct? Ethan didn't even lift his head. Wrong. It's double that now. Signs are old. Don't bother checking. And just like that, he turned away, back to his phone, his virtual audience more deserving of attention than the man who'd once built the foundation beneath his feet. Jackson said nothing. He let the moment pass, standing silently as fluorescent lights glinted off metal. The purifier's price tag was clean, new. The chrome still held the memory of someone who'd polished it earlier that morning. But the reflection staring back at Jackson wasn't just his own. It was a realization. He had become invisible in his own store. He walked away, but not toward the front. Instead, his feet carried him deeper, past the gloss, past the performance, into the heart of the building, the old storage room. No lights flickered to life, no welcoming sounds, just the echo of his shoes scraping against concrete and the faint scent of time past. The room was a museum of neglect. Stacked boxes, dusty signs from long-forgotten promotions, metal shelves sagging with weight and years. At the far end, beneath a heavy cloth, something waited. Jackson reached out. The fabric was rough beneath his fingers, thick with years of undisturbed dust. He pulled gently, and there it was. A photograph, framed and fading with time. 2 men, one older, in a white shirt with rolled sleeves, one younger, laughing. Machines in the background weren't fancy. No sleek designs, no corporate logos, but their faces radiated pride, joy, purpose. Jackson's breath caught. The older man was Martin, his father. Shirt wrinkled, hands calloused from lifting purifiers all day. But his smile, it was light, full, real. Eyes locked onto the camera with a warmth that reached across the years. Jackson didn't speak, couldn't. Something deep inside him shifted, quiet, heavy, real. He stood still. He remembered, long before dashboards and profit margins, Martin would walk every aisle, shake every hand. He knew whose kid just started school, who was saving for a wedding, who worked overtime just to make rent. And when the store went quiet, he didn't retreat to numbers. He grabbed a rag and wiped the machines himself. He offered people water. He asked about their day. Martin didn't manage a store. He cultivated a family. Jackson's hand pressed gently against the dusty glass of the frame. Silence wrapped around him, thick, alive with memory. It wasn't empty. It was sacred. Sacred with things once said and many left unsaid. And then finally, in a voice that barely rose above a whisper, he said it. They don't even check the price tags anymore, Dad. It wasn't anger. It wasn't blame. Just a quiet truth dropped like a stone into a deep well. The room accepted it, held it. Jackson didn't move for a long time. When he finally turned, he unfolded the folder he carried. Numbers, graphs, metrics, all neatly printed, all smiling. Sales were up 12%. Margins healthy. Customer retention strong. But the next page told another story. Customer comments. Short, unvarnished. No one helped me. Felt like I was bothering them. They just ignored me. He read each one carefully. Then again, the data and the words, they belonged to two different realities. One boasted success, the other whispered abandonment. Jackson stood there, caught between the clean, sterile world of performance and the warm, messy truth of human connection. Behind him, his father's photograph didn't move, but its presence was unmistakable. And for the first time in a long time, Jackson understood something no spreadsheet could tell him. You can scale a company, you can perfect your metrics, but if you lose the heart that started it all, then what are you really building? Jackson folded the reports neatly, almost absent-mindedly. He didn't need to read them again. Their numbers no longer mattered the way they used to. Slowly, he reached for the photograph. His father's face still smiling within the frame. But as his fingers wrapped around the wood, the frame felt heavier than it should, as if memory carried weight. He slid the photograph from the glass, careful not to smudge the image. Then, folding it once, he placed it in the pocket over his heart. A quiet, symbolic act of keeping something real close to where it all began. Without a second thought, Jackson unbuttoned his suit jacket, slipped it off, and laid it across a dusty, unopened box. He rolled up his sleeves, not out of style, but out of purpose. There was no press conference, no internal memo. Just him, just resolve. His hands moved deliberately. Keys, wallet. No name badge, no title. He checked the photo one last time, now hidden from sight but not from soul. The smile of his father might be out of view, but it lived now, inside something far deeper. Intention. The silence in the storage room wasn't empty. It was loaded with the weight of 1,000 yesterdays. And it pulled at him like gravity. Jackson stepped into the showroom again, this time as something else. Not the CEO, not the boss, but the son of a man who once cared so deeply. It changed people. His eyes swept the floor. Customers moved through aisles without direction. Some clutched brochures like life rafts. Others wandered, their faces drawn in silent questions. But no one greeted them. No warm welcome. Just employees with slouched postures and wandering eyes, leaning into counters like this place was just another gig. Their conversations were hushed and hollow, punctuated by short bursts of laughter from something on their phones, not from shared joy with a customer. There was no urgency here, no pride. The machine still gleamed under showroom lights, but their shine only highlighted the emptiness around them. Bold signs declared, "Trusted service," "Customer first," "Purity guaranteed." But those words now hung like hollow shells. They weren't promises. They were relics. In a far corner, two employees debated commissions with soft, venomous precision. Not anger, but calculation. At the front desk, a customer waited with the kind of patient hope only those still believing in good service carried. No one noticed her. Jackson didn't speak. He didn't need to. Silence was louder. This store wasn't broken in any obvious way. It hadn't collapsed. It had simply forgotten. Forgotten the why, forgotten the who, not with cracks in the walls, but with absence in the heart. Near the displays, Ethan slouched against a purifier, thumbs dancing on his phone. A middle-aged man approached, soft-spoken, holding a brochure that looked freshly folded. He pointed at a model tagged, "Today only, $1,299.99. Ethan didn't even glance up. "That's wrong," he said flatly. "It's almost double now." The man blinked. "Could you check?" Ethan shook his head, still scrolling. "Trust me, I've worked here long enough." The man gave a small nod, lowered his brochure, then turned and walked away. No protest, no argument. Just quiet disappointment. Ethan didn't notice. His world had already shifted back to his screen. Jackson watched. His fists didn't clench, his jaw didn't tighten, because this wasn't rage. It was something far worse. Indifference. A customer ignored, a chance lost, and no one even flinched. By the service counter, another interaction unfolded. A young woman approached, receipt in hand, voice wavering with confusion. "My purifier won't connect to the app. It's brand new." Brad, an employee, didn't look up right away. When he did, his expression was blank, as if inconvenience was baked into his job description. "Probably your Wi-Fi," he said. "But my phone connects fine," she replied cautiously. "Then it's your router," he interrupted. "Not the unit. We don't deal with home networks." No offer to help. No effort to understand. Just a wall. She stood still, clutching her receipt like it might protect her from the dismissal. Then, head bowed slightly, she stepped aside. Brad was already lost in his tablet again. Not even an ounce of empathy. Jackson didn't look away. This wasn't just a failing system. This was something rotting quietly under fluorescent light. Nearby, a couple hovered near the premium units. Brochures in hand, curiosity and confusion dancing in their eyes. 2 employees watched them from a distance. One moved, ready to step forward. The other stopped him with a light tap on the arm. "Wait, let them ask first, then it's mine." The first one hesitated, then nodded, then stepped back. Neither approached. The couple waited, then glanced at each other, then began reading alone. Across the showroom, Jackson saw it all, every flinch, every hesitation, every missed moment of kindness. This wasn't laziness, it was worse. It was strategy. Help had become currency. Kindness was optional. The mission had inverted. Jackson's gaze fell on the machines again. Beautiful, clean, reliable. But the soul wasn't in the product. It was in the people, and the people had forgotten. He watched another customer enter. No greeting, no eye contact, not even a nod. Staff didn't notice or didn't care. The air was full of sterile silence, where welcome once lived. And then the truth crystallized in Jackson's mind. Sharp, cold. "We don't sell water purifiers anymore," he thought. "We sell indifference, and business is good." Just then, an elderly man stepped through the automatic doors. His pace was slow, cautious. He held a brochure with 2 hands, its edges worn and creased. His eyes scanned machine after machine, searching, comparing, but clearly not understanding. No one helped him. One staff member looked in his direction, then looked away. Another straightened a sign just a few feet away, but said nothing. The man waited. No frustration crossed his face, only quiet confusion. Then, after a pause, he turned and walked back to the door, still holding the brochure, still alone. The doors slid shut behind him with a soft hiss, and Jackson stood frozen. That customer didn't complain. He didn't demand. He simply left. And in that silence, something inside Jackson cracked, not with noise, but with knowing. Some customers don't speak up. They just disappear. Nearby, a young couple was being pitched by a staff member with rapid, rehearsed efficiency. He gestured to a laminated chart, listing packages and upgrades. "Basics not enough. You want the premium maintenance plan, auto filter replacements, tech support priority." He rattled off like a script. Jackson kept watching. Something inside him was starting to move. Slowly, quietly, but undeniably. Because he remembered a time when this place didn't sell fear or upgrades. It sold trust, and they had lost it. "Without the plan," the staff member warned, "issues can take weeks to fix." The couple exchanged a nervous glance. The woman's voice was soft, unsure. "But it's brand new, isn't it?" "Trust me," the employee said with a practiced smile. "Things break, and when they do, it gets expensive." It wasn't guidance. It was a veiled threat. A sale made not through service, but through fear. Jackson watched them nod, slowly, like people cornered rather than convinced. They clutched their brochure like a shield, confused and uncomfortable. Still, the staff member smiled as he added the overpriced protection plan to their quote. Jackson's jaw tightened. It wasn't just a poor sales tactic. It was a betrayal of everything his father had once believed in, selling solutions for problems the team had created through neglect. That's when it hit him. The store wasn't just dysfunctional. It had monetized the dysfunction. Across the floor, a cashier completed another transaction with a satisfied click. The whiteboard beside her displayed targets like a scoreboard. Rows of names, each followed by neat red check marks. Notches of achievement. Quotas met, boxes ticked. Numbers that looked like success. He watched a staffer grin and update his own line. Another check, almost at quota. Behind him, the same couple from earlier stood quietly, receipt in hand. Their expressions uneasy. They had what they came for, on paper, but no one had truly helped them. No comfort, no care. They were sold, not served. The staff member never turned back to see their faces. His goal was clear. Numbers first, always. Jackson felt it, deep in his gut. This wasn't about customer satisfaction anymore. It was about metrics. It was about what could be counted, not what counted. They were achieving sales, yes, but missing the point entirely. Each red check on the board masked a failure of connection, of trust. And still, the system called it success. In a quiet corner, a phone screen glowed with a casual, rapid flick of texting fingers. Jackson stepped closer, unnoticed. A group chat. Internal. Staff only. The messages scrolled quickly. Old guy asked about the promo again, exhausting. A flood of laughing emojis. Let them read the signs. Saves us time. Thumbs up. More laughter. Jackson read every word. Slowly, painfully. The store that once greeted customers by name was now laughing behind their backs. Ethan sent another message. Smile counts as service, right? The thread burst with digital laughter. Jackson didn't react outwardly. No outburst, no cold stare. But something within him settled, something bitter, something true. This wasn't simply bad behavior. It wasn't about poor training or lazy staff. This was culture. A toxic culture. One that rewarded indifference and taught people to treat kindness like currency only spent when someone watched. A system couldn't be fixed by firing a few people. Not if the real problem lived in the air they breathed, in the values he had allowed to calcify. He stepped back. Silence clung to him like smoke. He scanned the floor. Employees leaned against counters. Customers stared helplessly at displays. Questions left hanging in the stillness. And then the question rose. Quiet, brutal, and honest. Were they failing him? Or had he failed them first? He'd built this, rewarded sales above service, trusted graphs instead of gut. Let culture drift while performance metrics smiled. He'd turned his father's legacy into a machine that produced results, but not trust. And trust was bleeding. Quietly, invisibly. His throat tightened. Maybe Ethan wasn't the disease, just a symptom. Then something shifted. Near the tablet station, a woman stood nervously, her phone trembling in her hands. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. I want to save my purifier settings, but I don't know how. For a moment, no one moved. Then quietly, someone stepped forward. I can help you, Sophie, a voice said. No badge scan, no cross-sell, no clipboard, just presence. The staff member gently took the phone, guided her step by step. See this icon? That means your data is safe now. Sophie's eyes didn't well up, but something changed in them. Relief, gratitude. She smiled, softly, sincerely. You're all set. She didn't try to upsell. She didn't rush. She was just there. Jackson watched from behind a display, breath held. For the first time that morning, someone had helped not because of a commission, but because it was the right thing to do. The woman walked away, lighter. Sophie stayed behind. She knelt beside the bottom shelf. A price tag sat crooked. Not much, but enough. Without a word, she reached out, straightened it, then wiped a thin layer of dust from the base of the machine with a cloth from her own pocket. No one had asked, no one was watching, but she did it anyway. Jackson's gaze never left her. He wasn't watching a task, he was watching a choice, a quiet one, but powerful. She wasn't working for numbers. She was working for something else. Pride. The kind his father would have recognized instantly. A young man nearby hovered by the mid-range models. Hesitant. Sophie approached. No pitch, no laminated chart. "Need help choosing?" she asked gently. He nodded. She didn't talk price. She asked one thing. What matters more, taste or filter speed? He paused, surprised. "I just want it to taste clean." She smiled. "Then you don't need the expensive one. This one's perfect." Simple, honest, clear, no pressure, just the truth. She stepped back, giving him space, trusting that respect built trust, and trust built sales. Jackson stood quietly behind the aisle. He realized something profound. This wasn't company policy. It wasn't the result of a training manual. It was who she was. And in that small moment, she taught him more than any quarterly report ever had. He watched her straighten another sign and move to the next customer. Not rushing, not rehearsed, just present. The truth rose like dawn. It wasn't the machines, or the margins, or the system. It was simpler. Trust doesn't live in spreadsheets. It lives in people. And sometimes, all it takes is one. One person willing to care when no one's watching. Jackson stayed frozen, his eyes on Sophie. Not because she saved the business, but because she reminded him what it had once stood for. The truth whispered in his mind. The real story isn't in the data. It's in the moments we choose to care. The next morning came, cold and bright. The doors slid open. Jackson walked in. No more plain shirt, no disguise. His name badge was clipped firmly to his chest. Jackson, CEO. The staff moved around him, unaware. Ethan brushed by, earbuds in. Brad leaned on the counter, sipping coffee. No one noticed. No one looked up. Jackson stood still near the entrance. No announcement, no speech, just presence. The man they ignored yesterday was here again. But today, he wasn't invisible. He wasn't a stranger. He was the one they worked for, and none of them knew yet. He watched. 15 seconds, 30. Silence. Then a manager crossed the floor, calm and focused. He handed 2 small slips of paper to Ethan and Brad. "Upstairs, meeting room, now." Ethan frowned. "What's this?" "Didn't say," the manager replied. "Came from corporate." Brad sighed. "I've got 2 sales waiting." They weren't concerned, just irritated, but the change was already coming, and Jackson was ready to begin. Ethan and Brad walked slowly down the back hallway, their steps heavier than they'd admit. As they passed a mirrored wall panel, Ethan adjusted his collar, more out of habit than pride. "Probably another sales tracker," he muttered. Brad smirked. "Hope it's not another role-play session." At the end of the hall, a closed door waited like a verdict. Neither of them noticed who was sitting behind it. Not yet. The door opened. They stepped inside and froze. Jackson sat at the head of the table, calm, still, waiting. Ethan stiffened. Brad's smirk fell away. The room went cold with realization. Jackson spoke, voice low, measured. "You didn't recognize me yesterday." A pause. "That's not your mistake." He let the words settle. "Your mistake was simpler." Another silence. "You treated a customer like they didn't matter." They said nothing, because there was nothing to say. Jackson leaned in, eyes steady. "I was just one of many, and that's why we're here." No charts, no lectures, just a simple truth too large to argue with. The shame wasn't that they ignored the CEO. It was that they ignored a person. His voice stayed even. "When people walk through our doors, they bring something fragile with them. A pause. Trust. And then, sharper now. Not cruel, but certain. And that is the only thing we are meant to sell. He watched them closely, letting it land. You didn't lose a sale yesterday, he said softly. You lost something bigger. He leaned back. Because no person, no customer, survives long in a place where their trust is betrayed. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was devastating. We survive missed targets, Jackson continued, but we don't survive broken trust. Still, neither man spoke. There were no excuses left that could fix what they'd shattered. Jackson's next words came like a clean break. You're both dismissed. No fury, no fanfare, just the end of a road they'd paved themselves. Ethan dropped his gaze. Brad shifted in his seat. Neither protested. They understood. This wasn't about yesterday. You're not leaving because of one mistake, Jackson added. You're leaving because I can't trust you. The silence that followed said everything. They left without a word. No slammed doors, no defiance, just silence. Downstairs, the store kept breathing. Sophie knelt beside a display, restocking filters. Her hands moved with quiet precision, the kind born not from training, but from care. She didn't notice Jackson approach at first. He said nothing, simply watching her finish the task. Then gently, his voice broke through the quiet. Sophie. She looked up, startled. She'd never spoken to him before. Yes, sir. He didn't speak right away. He just looked at her. Not as a CIO, not as a superior, but as someone who had finally seen something worth noticing. Come with me. No explanation. No rush. Sophie hesitated, wiped her hands on her apron, and followed. But not out of fear, out of curiosity. In the quiet corner of the showroom, they stood side by side. Sophie waited, her hands clasped, unsure. Jackson didn't pace, didn't explain. His tone was calm, certain. Starting today, he said, you'll lead the floor team. Sophie blinked. For a moment, she didn't move. Then softly, me? Jackson nodded once. You? She looked down at her hands. She didn't doubt him. She doubted herself. I'm not a manager, she whispered. I've never led a team. I don't know how to run reports or set quotas. She trailed off, eyes dropping, her fingers tightening as if to hold herself together. I'm just staff. The machines around them hummed faintly. Jackson didn't interrupt. He let her feel the weight of the moment. She waited for him to correct himself, to take it back, to tell her he'd made a mistake. He didn't. She wasn't doubting the opportunity. She was doubting if she was allowed to take it. And then, quietly, Jackson said, I'm not looking for someone who knows everything. He let the words settle in her heart. I'm looking for someone who knows how to care. Sophie looked up. His voice remained steady. You didn't help that woman yesterday because it was your job. You helped because it mattered. He stepped back, gave her space. And that's leadership. Not a title, not a report, just showing up when no one's watching. Sophie didn't answer, but something changed. In her shoulders, in her breath. Maybe for the first time, she believed him. Jackson saw it, the shift, the birth of belief. Because true change doesn't come from strategy decks or performance reviews. It comes from moments like this, from people like her. Leadership, his father once taught him, isn't loud, it's present. And maybe that was the lesson he'd been missing all along. They stood in silence, and in that stillness, Jackson realized something his reports had never told him. The brand wouldn't be saved by whoever sold the most. It would be saved by whoever cared first. Sophie looked up. He said nothing more, because the change had already begun. And it looked exactly like her. The team gathered later, unsure. They saw Sophie standing in front, not with a clipboard, not with a badge, just with herself. She cleared her throat. Just once. I'm not here to give a long speech, she began. Her voice was steady. Not loud, but enough. Just one rule. She paused. No one gets ignored. She met every pair of eyes. Not in this store. Another beat of silence. If someone walks in, we see them. If they're lost, we help. If they don't buy, it doesn't matter. She let the words breathe. Because how we treat people is the brand now. No pushback, no murmurs. They listened, not because she had authority, but because her words did. For the first time, they understood something no sales chart had ever taught them. Respect isn't a target, it's a standard. The doors slid open. A man stepped in, middle-aged, tired, hesitant. For a moment, the floor froze. Then, Marcus, young, quiet, still learning, stepped forward. No prompt, no hesitation. "Good morning, sir. Can I help you find something?" The man looked up, surprised, then nodded. And just like that, everything had changed. Not with a memo, not with a rebrand, but with a choice. One person at a time, one moment at a time. And finally, the store remembered what it was always meant to be. Marcus smiled, a small, honest gesture. Jackson watched from the sidelines. No one had instructed Marcus to step forward. No policy demanded it. No manager signaled it was time. He had simply chosen to act. And in that simple act, something powerful stirred. The shift hadn't come from a rule book. It had come from belief. Someone, somewhere, had made Marcus believe that doing the right thing mattered. Sophie stood nearby, her eyes calm, her hands folded gently in front of her. She didn't correct. She didn't command. She just observed, quietly recognizing a reflection of her own first step. It wasn't about following orders anymore. It was about following example. One moment, small, but unmistakably different. And in that moment, Jackson understood what his father might have always known. Change never starts big. It starts right here. At the installation counter, another ripple. A staff member, one Jackson didn't yet know by name, moved forward without hesitation. A customer stood by, struggling to connect her new purifier. Her face was flustered, her hands trembling with uncertainty. Without a word, the staff member knelt. His voice was soft even. "Let me show you." No script, no pitch, no upsell. Just presence. He guided her through each step, connected the tubes, smoothed the edges. When it was done, he wiped the base dry with a cloth he'd brought himself, checked everything twice. "Water's running now. You're all set." The woman's gratitude wasn't loud. It lived in the way her shoulders lowered, in the way her breath came easier. "Thank you," she said quietly. The staffer only nodded and returned to his post. No recognition, no applause, just respect, for her, for his role, for the moment. Jackson remained still. These machines might purify water, but his people, they were beginning to offer something far more rare: dignity. At the service desk, an elderly man stood holding a spare filter and a receipt. His voice was soft, unsure. "I just needed help finding this." Sophie approached, her step steady, her tone gentle. She didn't rush. She didn't speak down to him. She simply took the filter from his hands, walked him to the correct aisle, explained slowly, clearly. The man nodded, and gradually, a smile, subtle but genuine, appeared. "Feels different here now," he said quietly. A pause. "Here, it's different." He wasn't just talking about displays or prices. He meant the feeling, the way the air had changed. Sophie said nothing. She just nodded, a simple confirmation that needed no words. Further back, Jackson heard every syllable. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like a son, and it felt like something his father had once built was finally coming back. Not in data, but in the hushed voice of a stranger who'd felt the shift without knowing its source. He didn't step in, didn't interrupt, because now the right people were stepping forward on their own. No dashboards, no bonus targets. Just people. Fully present, fully human. He watched Sophie move across the floor, helping quietly, gently correcting when needed. She wasn't commanding the team, she was guiding them. Jackson's hands rested in his pockets. Years ago, he believed leadership was built on margins, built on scale. But today, hidden in plain sight, behind rows of gleaming machines, he began to question that. Maybe leadership wasn't about how loudly you spoke. Maybe it was how softly you stood while others found their voice. Nearby, a new hire refilled a customer's water bottle without being asked. No fuss, no spotlight. He simply saw a need and responded. Jackson didn't smile, but something inside him released. Not pride, not relief, understanding. Maybe this presence, this quiet, is what his father had always seen. A young mother stood near the mid-range units. One arm held her son, the other clutched a folded brochure. Her voice carried exhaustion. I just need something simple, safe. I don't know much about these. One of the quieter employees stepped forward. He didn't point her toward the top-tier models. He didn't recite a pitch. He asked a question. How many people in your home? She looked down at her son. Just me and him. The employee nodded. Then this one's enough, affordable, easy to maintain. He explained without pressure. Just truth. The mother's shoulders softened. Her son tugged at her hand. She smiled. Jackson watched from a distance. One moment, one exchange. But it was clear. Helping wasn't the exception anymore. It was becoming the rhythm. Jackson let the moment stretch. And in that quiet, a new truth surfaced. One he'd buried under reports and growth charts. Yes, numbers tell stories, but the most important ones? They're told by people. Machines still lined the showroom. Sales goals still blinked on terminals. But something deeper had shifted. Not on paper, on the floor, in voices, in choices. And Jackson understood. This brand wasn't dying. It was breathing again, slowly, gently, because someone had cared enough to begin with the smallest possible gesture, and others had followed. He closed his eyes just for a moment, and the weight he'd carried for so long lifted, not completely but enough. A brand, he realized, is never what you say. It's what people remember. And today, for the first time in a long time, this place was becoming memorable again. At the corner display, a young staff member paused. A price tag was slightly askew. She straightened it, checked the corners, smoothed the edge. Then, almost without thinking, she dusted the shelf and adjusted the purifier so it sat centered. No one asked her to. No one watched. She did it because leaving it wrong felt wrong. Jackson saw her. No instruction, no credit. Just quiet ownership. He didn't move, didn't speak, because this was the proof. Culture wasn't built in meetings. It was built right here, in forgotten corners, in unnoticed hands, in choices made when no one was looking. As the employee walked away, she didn't glance back. She didn't need thanks. She already knew. And Jackson knew now too. I don't need the best, or the fastest, or the smartest. I need people who don't look away. He scanned the floor. Sophie answering a question with calm certainty. Marcus helping a delivery worker without being asked. That was the difference. People who showed up not because of commission, but because of conviction. And for the first time in years, Jackson believed that maybe, just maybe, this was enough. Because some people build brands, and some people save them. They don't always wear titles. They don't ask for recognition. They just show up, quietly, consistently, when no one tells them to. So, if you ever meet someone like that, someone like Sophie, remember them. Not because they ask you to, but because people like her are rare. And places led by people like her, even rarer. So when you see someone fix what no one else noticed, when you hear someone explain without selling, when you feel seen instead of sold, pause. And remember, trust isn't built in moments. It's built in people.